Hey, friends, welcome back. I'm Adrienne Balkum, and I'm so glad you've joined me today. School is officially back in session at our house, and my son Corbin is just days away from bringing home his very first viola because this is his first year in orchestra. I'm ridiculously excited for him. So, does this officially make me an orchestra mom? Is that a thing? And have the rest of you parents finally figured out your school drop off and pickup schedules yet? Because I feel like the beginning of every school year requires a small logistics department, which actually brings us nicely into today's episode because we're talking about roads. And if you've been wondering how some of those transportation promises you've been hearing about are actually progressing, you're going to want to stick around, especially after what happened at the August 19th Rockwall County Infrastructure Consortium meeting. I like to call this the Road Consortium meeting, but somebody changed it to Infrastructure Consortium. Before that meeting, I posted something on my Facebook, half jokingly asking, I wonder if any of the member city representatives will bring up any elephants in the room, like the recent Rockwall County Commissioners Court discussion involving the transportation consultant and the agenda item concerning the county's agreement with Innovative Transportation Solutions, or ITS. So far, the Commissioners Court has not voted to end or not renew the ITS agreement. But here's the part I wasn't expecting. Someone actually brought up the elephant. Rockwall Mayor Tim McCallum. Yeah, Tim McCallum. And what started as a transportation update became a pretty revealing conversation about something we've already been talking about on this show: process. Except this time, another word kept surfacing: communication. We're going to get into all of that, including what Mayor McCullum said, what Heath Mayor Jeremiah McClure raised about State Highway 205, and how Judge Frank New responded. But first, let's take a quick trip around Rockwall County. In fate, there's a special election coming November 3rd, 2026. Voters will elect a council member for Place 1 to serve the remainder of an unexpired term ending in May 2027. And if you're hearing this on August 20th, the deadline to file for a place on that ballot is today at 6 p.m. There will also be 4 separate recall propositions on the ballot. Petitions seeking the recall of Mayor Andrew Greenberg and council members Richard Maneval, Mark Hatley, and Martha Huffman were submitted to the city secretary and determined to contain enough valid signatures to require a recall election. Each official will have a separate proposition asking voters whether that individual should be removed from office. So, fate voters will definitely have several decisions waiting for them in November. In Heath, if you're looking for something different for the kiddos this fall, Rush Creek Yacht Club has opened registration for its fall youth sailing programs. They offer a homeschool learn to sail program from ages 7 through 13 and beginner sailing programs for ages 7 through 17. Kids learn everything from water safety and reading the wind to actually rigging and sailing the boat themselves. And no sailing experience is required. Fall sessions begin in September, and you can find registration information at rcyc.org. I have to say, learning to sail sounds considerably cooler than anything I was doing after school at that age. In McLendon-Chisholm, we have some new commercial development coming. Tractor Supply is planning its next location off of State Highway 205 and FM 550. So we'll definitely be watching that project as development continues along the 205 corridor. And congratulations are in order for Rockwall ISD. All three of the district's high schools once again earned A ratings. Rockwall High School earned a 96, Rockwall Heath High School earned a 95, and Quest Academy earned a 92. Congratulations to the students, teachers, staff, and families. That is an incredible accomplishment. Keep up the great work, y'all. All right. And now we need to talk about what happened when the mayors, county commissioners, and other officials all sat down around the same table. Because remember, that elephant I wondered whether anyone would mention, someone did. So let's get to it. If you listened to my recent episode, When a Process Matters and When It Doesn't, you heard me walk through the July 28th Rockwall County Commissioners Court meeting. That was the meeting where commissioners voted 3-2 to begin contract negotiations with HNTB Corporation to potentially become the county's new bond program management consultant, replacing a transportation consulting relationship with ITS and John Polster that had lasted more than 20 years. And I want to make an important distinction here. The July 28th vote did not finalize the contract with HNTB. It authorized negotiations. But much of the discussion that day wasn't really about HNTB versus ITS. It was about process. How did we get here? Who was involved? Who had been consulted? What evaluation had taken place? And when you're talking about the people helping manage transportation projects across one of the fastest growing counties in Texas, those aren't insignificant questions. Well, apparently, that conversation wasn't finished because on August 19th, many of the county's elected officials, city representatives, and other officials gathered for the Rockwall County Infrastructure Consortium meeting held at the historic courthouse in downtown Rockwall. And this time, another word began surfacing: communication. And I don't think anyone would have scripted the setup better. Earlier in the meeting, representatives were talking about regional infrastructure planning, roads, drainage, flood mitigation, development, and the need for different governmental entities to coordinate their plans. Then, about 40 minutes into the meeting, Rockwall Mayor Tim McCallum had a question, and suddenly that idea became very real.
I did want to ask one question, though, since we're all here, and that's the communication process, because Mary and I meet frequently, and I know you guys the Commissioners Court made a change, but as the mayor of Rockwall, I never got any formal communication about your change in consultants. So I want to know, what's the communication process to communicate with? I don't know if other mayors got any formal communication, but as I sit here today, I still haven't received anything formal from the county letting me know about the change you all are making. What is the process?
So the process of communication with the mayors,
with the cities, because my city manager didn't get any communication formally either. So I'm just curious.
Now, the mayor of the largest city in Rockwall County was sitting across the table from county officials, asking essentially the same thing, except this time he wasn't talking about how the consultant decision was made. He was asking, how were the cities supposed to find out about it? And that distinction matters because this wasn't just a political announcement. These cities have transportation projects underway. They coordinate with the county. They coordinate with TxDOT. They work with regional transportation officials. They contribute money to projects. And according to Mayor McCallum, Rockwall was still working through the county's existing consultant, John Polster. So when something that significant may be changing, the question isn't simply whether the information appeared somewhere on a government agenda. The question becomes, how do the governments actually working together communicate with one another? And Judge Frank New's answer was, let's hear it.
Gosh, I would say that's just putting out our agenda, and that is on the agenda for Tuesday. That change has not been made yet.
Okay. Well, I know there was some happenings. There was a lot of rumor mill going around, I know you guys had a public meeting. I think our staff is, keeps track of that. So they gave me a briefing on what they heard publicly. But I would like in the future for the Commissioners Court to designate somebody to contact the mayors and particularly my city staff to make sure that we're aware when big conversations like that have happened in case we miss it. Because we're working on projects and we're working through your current consultant and we're using some of our money to do those. And then when we contact consultants and we'd rather not hear from consultants that there might be a change in direction or a communication on something needs to go somewhere else. We'd rather hear from our partners at the county rather than our consultants, if that's fair.
That is fair. I agree with that.
Okay.
And along that same line, I'm going to, as soon as the budget's done, restart my mayor's meetings so we can all just get in the same room and have conversations.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, but I'm concerned about roads. The most important thing on my list is building roads. So when I hear we're changing transportation consultants, I'd like for me and I had to sit down with my staff, and I'm just concerned that we weren't prepared for your change. And so we want to be prepared for the change when it happens, and we want to have an orderly process. And to be honest, as a mayor of the largest city in this county, it was, surprises aren't great for us. Our citizens don't like surprises.
Got it.
They like plans and processes, and that's what we try to bring for them. So just my feedback, but that's our update.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
And I think this exchange deserves a little unpacking. Judge New was correct about one thing that is important for listeners to understand. At that point, the change had not yet been completed. The matter was still moving through Commissioner's Court, but Mayor McCallum was asking about something slightly different. He was asking, who's calling the cities? Those are two different forms of communication. An agenda tells the public what government intends to consider. But when two governmental entities are actively working together on projects involving roads, consultants, funding, and planning, McCallum's argument was that there also needs to be direct communication between the partners. And Judge New ultimately agreed with him. In fact, Judge New said that once the county budget process was finished, he intended to restart meetings with the mayors. Those lunch meetings that I told you about? Yeah, he's going to try to have more meetings again with the mayors so they could get all back into one room and have conversations again. I'm telling you guys, bad idea. Don't even bother doing that again. It's just not a good idea. Y'all have got to have these meetings in public. Mayor McCallum then explained why he cared. Roads are one of his biggest priorities. His staff is planning projects. They're spending money. They're coordinating with the county. And when the county begins moving toward a different transportation consultant, Rockwall needs time to prepare for whatever that transition might look like. His words were pretty simple. Citizens don't like surprises. They like plans. They like processes. And governments need to be prepared for change. That brought us right back to the conversation we were having after the July 28th Commissioner's Court meeting. Not whether somebody is allowed to make a decision, not whether Commissioner's Court has the authority to change consultants. Of course they do. The more important question is, what does a well-managed transition look like when that decision affects relationships beyond Commissioner's Court? And then Commissioner Lauren Lichty responded, this is where the meeting became especially interesting to me because Commissioner Lichty didn't dismiss Mayor McCallum's concern. He agreed with it. He briefly mentioned it at one of the meetings, at one of the Commissioner Court meetings. He brought that up, that maybe we should be presenting this information to the road consortium meetings. So let's hear what he said.
Yeah, appreciate your comments.
Absolutely.
couple things I wanted to bring up. One was mentioned by Erica already. We're issuing we're issuing an RFQ to get some more engineering capacity to improve our building on roads. And Mayor, following up on what you said, in order to keep ahead with the city of Rockwall, keep ahead of them, we're going to have to issue more bonds. And there's a couple reasons. One of the big reasons is we're going to have to spend probably about $8 million in bond funds, to sign a contract with half to do the southern portion of the outer loop. That'll be about $8 million, $7.5 to $8 million. We'll probably have some other things we have to spend money for from our bond funds also. So we need to start looking at that. And one of the things we need to do is, I agree with you completely, is we need to communicate around this table. If we're not doing that, we're failing. And I've got something I wanted to hand out here, not because I have a proposal, but just as we get ready to issue more bonds at the county level, and that affects every one of the cities also, as well as the county. We may want to think about some strategic ways to do this, and I don't know if I have enough copies here, but if we can pass those down. And this is a conversation that I've had over the last week with our county engineer and with our consultant, ITS. Because one of the things that's happened is we've got road projects where, we've done what they call a rack and stack. Somebody uses that term, where we get all the PS&E work done and then we're waiting for TxDOT to fund them. Well, on at least 3 of these projects listed here, 548, 551, and 3097, they're not moving. For one of the reasons is there's not right-of-way acquisition money. So obviously you have to acquire right-of-way before you build roads. So one of the things we've talked about with Erica and the consultants is whether or not we should shift strategies and try and focus on roads where we have a huge need for improvement, and try and think about acquiring some right-of-way. Again, I'm not far enough along. We're not far enough along, because it's not a decision that I make or anybody makes. We all need to be talking about this together. But it's something we might want to think about. Instead of doing PS&E on some roads, acquire some right-of-way that might get TxDOT to put up more money for that. And just to give you an idea, in 2021, TxDOT spent $800 million, the Dallas district, just the Dallas district, spent $800 million on right-of-way acquisition. The budget for 2026 was $350 million. The budget for 2027 is $195 million. So there's been a huge reduction in right-of-way acquisition funds. And again, you can't build roads if you don't acquire the right-of-way. So don't have a proposal, but I think it's really important that we do communicate well, Mayor, as you said. And I think what was set up 2 decades ago in this county was this road consortium, and we're trying to convert to an infrastructure consortium. And I think it's important that we have those discussions in here. And I wanted to get this out, again, not because I have a proposal, but we probably will be issuing bonds here again in the near future. And I think that addressing it and maybe looking at different strategies is something that we may want to consider at that time.
There it is. The purpose of the room. For residents who don't spend their evenings watching transportation meetings, and I completely understand why you wouldn't, this consortium exists so that the county, cities, and transportation partners can sit down together and talk about infrastructure that doesn't politely stop at municipal boundaries. A road doesn't suddenly stop affecting Rockwall because it crosses into Heath. Traffic coming out of McLendon-Chisholm doesn't disappear when it reaches Rockwall. Development and fate affects regional mobility. TxDOT projects affect everybody. Funding decisions affect everybody. And that is why communication matters. Commissioner Lichty's observation was simple. If the governments sitting around that table aren't communicating, something is wrong. But there was another revealing moment. Commissioner John Stacy, who, by the way, I don't know, he looked like he just rolled out of bed whenever he showed up to this meeting. But he spoke shortly after, when it was time for him to speak, and he said that when Commissioners Court decided to move forward with the consultant negotiations, he personally contacted both of the cities in his precinct and spoke with their city managers about what was happening. You know what? I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm probably going to call those city managers and I'm going to ask them directly about the context of that conversation. So, I might just put in a call.
Yeah, I just would like to say that I definitely get what you're saying, Mayor, but I would like to say that I am proud to know that I did reach out to both of my cities the day that we decided to engage in the contract, to both of my city managers, explain them what was going on, open myself up to talk to any council members that wanted to do it. So I do understand that is important. And I'm glad to see that everyone's trying to do everything they can to build roads, because I think that's what the citizens are demanding of us, so.
You're right, they are.
And this is where I would ask listeners to notice something. One commissioner says he contacted his cities. The mayor of Rockwall says neither he nor his city manager received formal communication. Judge New says the communication process was essentially the public agenda and then agrees more direct communication would be appropriate. Commissioner Lichty says if they're not communicating around the table, they're failing. Those aren't accusations. Those are statements made by the officials themselves during the meeting. And collectively, they raise a pretty straightforward question. Did Rockwall County actually have a defined communication process for this transition? Because if the answer depended on which commissioner represented your city, that doesn't sound like a county-wide process. It sounds like individual officials handling communication individually. Maybe that's something this consortium can fix. And maybe Judge New restarting those mayor meetings may help. But the meeting provided an example of why getting that communication right isn't just about hurt feelings or political courtesy. It can have real consequences. Heath Mayor Jeremiah McClure, he had a question about State Highway 205, the middle section. If you've driven through Rockwall County recently, you already know why 205 matters. Growth continues south. Development continues. Traffic continues. And State Highway 205 is one of the major north-south corridors connecting these communities. Mayor McClure wanted to know where things stood between the locally preferred option and the technical option being discussed with TxDOT. Rockwall Mayor Tim McCallum responded, and what he described was not exactly encouraging. According to Mayor McCallum, Rockwall officials recently had what he called a contentious conversation with TxDOT. He said they were told that funding associated with 205, the middle section, had been moved elsewhere and that TxDOT did not currently have the dollars necessary for another portion of the project they had been discussing. Then came the part residents should pay attention to. Mayor McCallum said TxDOT told them that the 205 middle section was on the back half of a 10-year plan. So McCallum asked, what does that actually mean? When do you turn dirt? According to McCallum, the answer he received was approximately 8 years. Let's take a listen.
They said that the 205 project was on the back half of a 10-year plan. Commissioner Macklick was there. Their exact words were 205 Middle's on the back end of a 10-year plan. And I said, well, what does that mean? And they said, that means it's the back end of a 10-year plan. I go, what does that, when will you turn dirt? And they said, 8 years. In about 8 years, we'll turn our first dirt for 205 Middle. Is that pretty much a direct quote? Okay. So when that happened, I'll just use the expression, all hell broke loose. And to lack of a better term, I told them that that was not acceptable, because at the corner of John King and 205, there will be 4,000 homes within the next 8 years. 3,500 of those are platted already.
8 years. Now put that beside another number Mayor McCallum gave the room. He said approximately 4,000 homes could be located around the John King and 205 area during that same period, with several developments already platted. And remember where some of that growth is occurring, between Rockwall and McLendon-Chisholm. That is why this isn't just a city of Rockwall story. It isn't just a Heath story, and it isn't just a commissioner's court story. The transportation system doesn't care where the city limit sign is. Everybody eventually meets on the road. Mayor McCallum said Rockwall pushed back on TxDOT's timeline, requested additional evaluation, and was waiting for another meeting. He also said Michael Morris, remember that name, Michael Morris? Yeah, with the Regional Transportation Council, had become involved in this discussion as well. Then Mayor McCallum turned back to Mayor McClure, and this is the exchange I think residents really need to hear.
But the scary thing for our residents and the citizens of this county should be that the official statement as of today is that 205 is on the back half of a 10-year plan.
And that was my concern when I met with Susan.
And you heard something very similar. Okay,
Very similar.
great.
But we hadn't tied out, and I haven't talked to anybody at the Commissioner's Court about it.
And that will hurt your city, McLendon-Chisholm, of course, us in
It's a
Rockwall.
big problem.
It will be a big problem.
Right. But Mayor's, my understanding from talking with Michael Morris is that there has been some consideration changes with season, and that it does look like that they're going to be able to probably address many of those topics.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we asked.
I heard very positive comments.
That's great. That's fantastic. And we talked about moving up the ladder a little bit if we had to at the TxDOT chain. Of course, the TxDOT representatives, their words were they would be offended if we did that, but that's how government works. It's how we're supposed to do things. But Dana and Mary can tell you, they literally were offended that we would even think about trying to move our county forward up the ladder. But Michael was
I don't think
gracious enough
offenses
to
had
get
to be done. I think that
involved.
he got involved.
Yeah. So I think hopefully we're gonna head it, we are gonna reconvene another meeting of that same group. And hopefully have different news.
So I would say, let me help with that. So the communication that didn't go that way,
You had two commissioners in that meeting,
Yeah.
so,
well, let me help with that.
great.
So I'd be happy, because you're right, that is important to the entire county.
Well, what I said to them was, it's the biggest lie in Rockwall, that 205 is under construction.
205 Middle.
Middle, it's
Yeah.
under, because people see utilities moving, they see all this stuff, and they think, oh, things are happening, but things aren't happening.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I've not said the middle's under construction.
No, I know, but this is what citizens,
They see that, they just see
They
that.
assume.
they see signs and they believe that means progress is
That's
coming.
right, we're gonna start pouring concrete
That's
in
right.
it.
But we're not.
Right. All right,
Different issue. Same underlying problem. How is information moving between the people responsible for planning Rockwall County's transportation future? And maybe even more importantly, is it moving quickly enough? So losing months or potentially years because governments aren't coordinating strategies is not an insignificant matter. Then Mayor McCallum made another observation that may explain some of the confusion residents have about 205. People see activity, they see utility work, they see signs, they see equipment, and naturally they assume the road project is moving. That exchange needs context because McCollum wasn't accusing Judge New of making that claim. Although we could probably pull some past election campaign videos and posts of things that Judge New had said. I mean, he had a video where in the back of him he had the State Highway 205, but he's actually uttering the words that 205 was a farm road. And apparently he put 205 on the map and how we're a year ahead of this road getting expanded, and all because of his efforts and his relationships. Yet he could not name the one person that he went down to Austin to see, allegedly, to talk about roads. In fact, Judge New immediately clarified that he had not been telling residents 205 Middle was under construction, and McCollum agreed. The point was public perception. Residents see visible activity and assume construction is imminent, but the actual transportation timeline may be very different. Because if Mayor McCollum's account of that tech stop meeting is accurate, residents who believe the 205 Middle section is just around the corner may need a much clearer explanation of where that project actually stands. And this is where I want to connect August 19th meeting back to the July 28th meeting and also the August Commissioners Court meeting. The easiest version of the story would be Rockwall County may replace ITS with HNTB, okay, which is a total different engineering firm. And ITS is with John Polster. Some commissioners support it. Some commissioners question the process. End of story. But after listening to the consortium meeting, the consultant decision exposed something larger. Change one piece of that system and the effects can travel well beyond the commissioner's courtroom. That doesn't mean Rockwall County should never change consultants. It doesn't mean ITS should automatically remain. And it doesn't mean HNTB shouldn't receive the contract. Those are separate questions. When Rockwall County changes the people helping coordinate its transportation program, what is the plan for communicating that transition to everybody else already working inside that system? Because Mayor McCallum was very clear. Rockwall didn't want to hear about changes from a consultant. They wanted to hear it from the partner of the county. Judge New said that was fair. And there is one more piece of the story that I think deserves attention. Remember what Commissioners Court actually voted on. They authorized contract negotiations with HNTB. That is not the same thing as approving a final contract. And based on discussions that have occurred since that July 28th vote, I am beginning to wonder whether those negotiations are proving more complicated or more expensive than commissioners initially anticipated. I want to be very clear about that. That is my observation and my suspicion. I have not seen a final HNTB contract presented publicly, so I cannot tell you what the final price is, what terms have been negotiated, or whether negotiations have reached an impasse. But until the agreement appears on a public agenda, those are exactly the things residents should continue watching. And now, after the August 19th Infrastructure Consortium meeting, I think there is another question Commissioners Court should consider before moving forward. Why not bring the proposed agreement to the cities and transportation partners sitting around this table and let them understand what the transition actually means? Because these aren't outside spectators. These governments are coordinating projects with Rockwall County. They're contributing money, they're planning roads, they're working with TxDOT, they're interacting with the county's transportation consultants, and Rockwall Mayor Tim McCallum told the county directly that neither he nor his city manager had received formal communication about the consultant change. He said Rockwall would rather hear about changes from its partner at the county than learn about them through consultants. Judge Frank New agreed that was fair. Commissioner Lauren Lichty went even further. He said that if the governments around that consortium table aren't communicating, we're failing. And he reminded everyone that this consortium was created roughly 2 decades ago, so these governments could have exactly these kinds of conversations. So perhaps this is an opportunity. Before Commissioners Court signs a major new transportation consultant agreement, show the partners what is being proposed. Explain the scope, explain the cost, explain who will handle what. Explain how projects currently being coordinated through ITS would transition, and ask the cities whether they see problems the county may not have considered. They're not surrendering Commissioners Court authority. Commissioners Court still makes the decision. It's simply using the regional partnership that Rockwall County already created. And there is another unfinished piece that matters. As of the August 19 consortium meeting, Judge New acknowledged that the consultant change had not yet been made. The separate question of ending or not renewing the county's existing relationship with ITS had not yet completed its path through Commissioners Court either. That creates something government does not always give enough of: time. Time to look at the numbers, time to look at the negotiated contract, time to talk with the cities, time to determine how existing projects would transition, and perhaps time to reconsider whether I don't know whether the concerns raised publicly over the last several weeks have caused commissioners to slow down, and I don't know whether the eventual HNTB proposal will turn out to be a great deal, a bad deal, or something somewhere else in between. We don't have the documents yet. Before anyone declares victory, before anyone declares that one consultant is unquestionably better than another, and before Rockwall County dismantles a transportation consulting relationship that has existed for more than 2 decades, let's see the agreement. Let the public see it. Let the cities understand it. Let the people responsible for actually moving these projects forward ask questions about it. Because after 2 meetings dominated by the words process and communication, maybe Rockwall County has been given an opportunity to do something very simple. Get the process right before making the change permanent. The question now isn't whether Rockwall County Commissioners Court can change consultants. It can. The question is whether Rockwall County will use the time it still has to make sure the next decision is one its partners and its taxpayers actually understand. And I'll be watching the next Commissioners Court agenda to see what happens. And while we're talking about following your local government, don't forget it is budget workshop season for cities, counties, and school districts. Over the next several weeks, you'll see budget discussions, proposed tax rates, public hearings as local governments work toward adopting their budgets and their tax rates. This is one of the best times of the year to pay attention. Find out where your local tax dollars are going, look at what projects are being funded, look at what is being delayed, and pay attention to the priorities your elected officials are putting into the budget. Because budgets have a funny way of telling you what the priorities really are. As always, thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. Stay curious. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow the podcast and share it with a friend or neighbor who wants to stay informed about what's happening here in Rockwall County. And if you're watching on YouTube, check out the post tab on my channel. I'll have a post or poll about today's episode, and I'd love to hear what stood out to you from the Road Consortium discussion. Until next time, I'm Adrienne Balkum. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you in the next episode.